Surface area, part 2. So our question here says, calculate how much it would cost to paint the outside of the following shape, so that shape there, with paint that costs $5.99 per square meter. And then if I take a look at our diagram, that is definitely a cone that has a measurement here of 20 and a measurement here of 90. So the first thing I notice before I even start looking at my formula sheet is that this is given in centimeters, but my cost is given in square meters. So there's a unit mismatch. So the first thing I want to do is try to change my units either from centimeters into meters or from meters into centimeters. It is harder to change a unit that has a square on it, so I think I'm going to try to change these first into meters. So if I take a look at my conversions, if we are converting from centimeters into meters, that is 2 steps. And if we're going up, we're going to move our decimal place to the left. So we're going to end up moving our decimal 2 spots to the left. So 20 centimeters, if I move my decimal 2 spots to the left, becomes 0.20 or just 0.2 meters. And if I do the same thing on the 90 centimeters, if I move that decimal 2 spots over, that becomes 0.9 or 0.90 meters. Okay, so this is a cone, and I'm going to take a look at my formula sheet and try to match the letters. So I see that there's radius, that's R. There's a height in the middle that hits the center of the circle at 90 degrees. So that's going to be this part here in the middle. And then the outside slanted edge is called the slant, or S. So the formula for a cone is made up of a circular base on the bottom and then a weird partial circle on the side. So if you were to peel it open, it would have a piece of a circle that's been wrapped around the outside of that circle to make that cone. So here it says the area of the lateral surface. Lateral means side, so this is the surface of that side part, and it is 2 pi rs, and then the area of the base is a full circle, so it is pi r squared. So the total area is the circle on the bottom and the part on the side, so pi rs for the side, and then pi r squared for our base. But as I mentioned before, if you don't need to leave any of the parts out, then you are welcome to just use the final formula that's on there. So I'm going to use pi rs plus pi r squared. So our surface area equals pi rs plus pi r squared. So as I start to fill these numbers in, I'm going to find out that I'm missing one of them. So I'm going to leave pi. We'll use our calculator for that. My r, my radius, is 0.2. But when I get to the slant, I don't actually know what the slant height is. So I'm going to leave that for a second, and then we'll see if we can figure it out. And then it's plus pi, and then times my radius, so 0.2. And it's squared, so I multiply it by itself. So I do 0.2 times 0.2. Now, the problem is I don't know what my slant is, but the radius, the height, and the slant together make a right angle triangle, which means I should be able to use Pythagorean theorem to calculate my missing slant height. So if I label all of my sides, the one across from the right angle is always your hypotenuse, or your C. And then the other two, it doesn't really matter which one's A and B. I like to put B on the bottom for the base, and then I'll put A as my height. So the formula for Pythagorean theorem, and I am going to do that way off to the side over here. And I think I might just redraw that triangle for me to look at. I have 0.2, I was about to say 20, but we converted it, and then 0.9, and I'm trying to find the slant on this side. So I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, We already labeled on the other picture that our A and B are these two sides here. So I'm going to do 0.9 squared plus 0.2 squared equals S squared. 0.9 squared, I would do 0.9 times 0.9, which is 0.81. 0.2 squared is 0.2 times 0.2, which is 0.04. I'm going to add those two numbers together to get a grand total of 0.85. And then I don't want it to be squared, I just want S. So I'm going to square root both sides to cancel out that square. And I get a decimal as my answer. So that is 0.92. I take a peek at the next number. It's a 1, so I'm going to leave it as 0.92. So this is approximately 0.92, and that is meters. So now that I know what my slant is, I can come back to my surface area formula and put in 0.92. And then all I need to do is calculate. Now, there is something a little weird about what I'm going to do when I calculate this. If I go to calculate and I use the pi, I'm going to get a really big decimal. And I don't really want to have a decimal, right? So if I use pi times 0.2 times 0.92, I get this. And because this is not my final answer, you would need to write down every single last decimal place, which I do not want to do. So I'm going to leave the pi right now and pretend it's like an x or a variable. And I'm actually just going to multiply 0.2 and 0.92. So 0.2 times 0.92 is still a decimal, but it's a lot less decimal places than if I threw in the pi. So I'm going to say that the surface area here is 0.184 times pi. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the 0.2 times 0.2 in the second part here. And I get 0.04 times pi. Now, if I pretend that pi is a variable like an x, these would be like terms because they have the same variable part. So I'm going to collect like terms by adding 0.184 and 0.04 to get 0.224 times pi. And now that that's my final answer, I'm going to actually multiply it by pi, and then I can round it. So I'm going to use my pi button. If you don't have a pi button, I'd like you to use 3.14159, and it gives me 0.70. Next number is a 3, which is less than 5, so I'm going to leave it as 0.70. So it's approximately 0.70 meters squared. Now, if I go back and reread the question, it says calculate how much it would cost to paint the outside of the following shape with paint that costs $5.99 per meter. So I didn't point out, and I should have, that because we're talking about the outside of the shape, that's how I knew that it was surface area. And now that I have my surface area, I should be able to use that with the cost to see if I can figure out how much this is. So anytime you're given a price, if I was doing 1 square meter, I would do $5.99 times 1. If I was doing 2 square meters, I would do $5.99 times 2. So if I'm doing 0.70 square meters, I'm going to take that number and multiply it by $5.99. So my cost is going to be $5.99 times the amount that I need. So I'm going to do $5.99 times 0.70, and that gives me $4.19. I look at the next digit, it's a 3, so I'm going to leave it at $4.19. So it should cost $4.19 to paint the outside of the shape. So I am going to write a little sentence. So I'm going to say, therefore, the cost will be $4.19. You can watch the next video to learn how to do question number 3.